Welcome to Board Game Brawl. Today we are taking a look at Dragon's Hoard from Nathaniel Mortensen. Now this was a game that was on Kickstarter quite a while ago actually, maybe not quite a year, but pretty close to it. And basically it's a point collecting card, set collecting card game. Every player takes control of a dragon and it's for 2 to 4 players. And you're trying to collect sheep because you're a dragon and you eat sheep. But different colored sheep, and that actually represents the backs of all the cards in the game. It's a different colored sheep. But you're using those sheep to trade in for what's on the other side of some of those cards, which is namely treasure. And treasure comes in all forms. It could just be coins and treasure chests and things like that, but it could also be damsels in distress or princes in distress. But you'll collect these, and you might even get a lair to put all this treasure in, which gives you more points at the end of the game. But in the meantime, you can also use attack cards like knights and wizards against your opponents, or try to defend against your opponents doing the same to you. It's basically a light card game, but that's definitely not a knock, as I have a lot of really fun light card games. So let's take a look, we'll come back, and I'll let you know what I really think about it. Dragon's Hoard is a competitive card game for 2 to 4 players, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to teach the game as if it was a 2-player game, because with 3 or 4 players, the rules on the amount of cards that you draw changes just slightly. But in any case, every player starts off with 4 cards drawn from the main deck, and then you're going to lay out another 4 cards that represent the field, and you always put those cards sheep side down. Now, at the start of your turn, you're going to draw 2 cards, and you have the option of drawing off the top of the deck or from the cards that are out in the field, but you cannot look at the first card that you drew until you draw both of your cards. And as soon as you draw one of these cards, it gets replaced by another one off the top of the deck. Now, the whole point of this game is that your dragons, who are turning in your sheep in order to get treasures and have the best hoard, hence the name, out of all the other dragons. So what actually ends up happening is that each of the cards can be used for 2 different things. You can either use it as sheep on the back side of the card, so when you hold the cards, you actually hold them so the sheep are facing your opponent. You use those sheep as currency, and the colors on the sheep side corresponds to the colors on the other side, so you always know just from looking at it. Or you can actually use the cards for what's on the other side, which is either going to be action cards or treasure cards. So on your turn, you'll have 2 actions you can do: play a treasure and play an action card. You don't have to do both, and you can do either of them in any order, but you can only play 1 treasure and 1 action card. So let's look at the action cards first. The Angry Mob makes all the other players in the game discard half of their hands. The Shepherd lets you immediately draw 2 more cards and follows the same rules, so you can draw from either spot, and you have to draw both before you can look at them. The Thief lets you steal 2 cards from another player. The Knight skips another player. And unlike in games like Uno, this can be any player, so just choose a player and they are skipped. Now, the battle card lets you stop one of these other action cards that someone is trying to play against you. You have this in your hand, someone tries to hit you with a nasty card like the steal card or the skip card, and then you just play this and stop that action. However, if a player uses this wizard card in conjunction with one of those nasty cards, it makes that attack unstoppable, which means it cannot be blocked with the stop action card. But there is a little expansion that was included with this game called the Unicorn, that actually protects. So long you play this card on your turn as your action, put it in front of you until the start of your next turn, no one can hit you with a nasty effect card, even if it is included with a wizard. And then finally, you have the Wild Sheep. Basically what this means is that you can use this as currency, just like as if it was the sheep side, but this can count for any color of sheep, and I'll explain more about that in a moment. So those are the different types of actions. So what about the treasure? The treasure is how you're actually going to win the game. And most of the treasure cards are formatted the same way. You'll have the name up here. You'll have the amount of victory points it's worth at the end of the game. And then you have the sheep cost, which just sounds funny to say. But for instance, this ring, it has a symbol of a red sheep, so that means you would have to discard one of the red sheep cards into the discard pile. But then also this little multicolored symbol here means you can have a sheep of any color together with it. So You could have 2 red sheep, you could have a red sheep and a yellow sheep. Doesn't really matter as long as one of those sheep is red, so that's worth 2 points. Then you have cards like the treasure chest, and I'm just showing you some examples. That's worth 5 points and needs 2 yellow sheep and then 2 sheep of any other color. And they get better, so you have the wishing tree, which is worth 7 points, but you need 3 orange sheep in this case. And again, all of these cards are the same. There's a dispensation of them for every color of the 5 colors in the game. So there's a blue version of the wishing tree, a purple version of the wishing tree, and so on. So 3 orange for this one and 2 of any color. And then the best ones are the damsels and the princes. So you have damsels here, which is worth 8 points, but you need 4 purple sheep and 1 of any color. Here's the orange version of that. I like how the artwork is different for each of the different colors. The blue prince, the yellow prince. And then there are lair cards. There's a lair card for every color, and depending on the number of players in the game, you can, no matter what amount of players you have, you can only have 1 of any color in play. And for certain amounts of players, you can't even have every color in play. But basically, this counts as your treasure play, but as you see, it's worth no points on its own. But if you have one of these in play, for every treasure you play that is of the corresponding color to this lair, you get bonus points at the end of the game. So if you have the red lair in play and you have 1 red treasure out there, another red treasure, you get 1 bonus point. If you have 2 red treasures out, you get 3 points, and then 6 points, then 10 points, and so on. A 5th treasure will get you nothing extra and special, but you can keep playing those other cards for their own points. And that's essentially the game. You're going to keep going like this until someone has played a certain amount of treasure, depending, again, on the number of players. It might be 8, it might be 10. To be honest, I can't really remember off the top of my head. But once someone has a certain amount of treasures out in play, then you will finish out the round. And whoever, you'll add up all the points on all the different treasure cards that you have, plus the bonus points from your lairs if you manage to play those. And whoever has the most points at the end of all that is the winner and the ultimate sheep-herding dragon. Dragon's Hoard is a very simple card game, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a couple of tricks to show people. Mainly 2 different things. First off, using cards to do different things. That's a mechanic that I like in all kinds of games, and I think Dragon's Hoard does it in a somewhat unique and kind of cool way. Having the sheep on one side of different colors, having the cards on the other side be of the same color, but your opponent has no idea what they are. And until you draw them from either the center or from the deck, you have no idea as well, or steal them from your opponents. But it leads to some very interesting choices. Do you use a sheep as a colored sheep because you need it to pay for this other card? But in the meantime, on the other side of that sheep you're using is other treasure, which may not be as good, but if you had saved it, maybe you would want to play it because you have a lair out there, so the more of that color of treasure you play, you're going to get more points. So what do? Because the longer it sits in your hand, it actually makes it more vulnerable to other players from stealing it. So you can't just sit and camp on a bunch of cards for a while, especially since there's a hand limit. So you have to make some tough decisions. You have to make the decision. Do you spam a certain color? I've tried that method, and it kind of works for me, but I didn't win the game that I tried it in. Basically going all for one color. Just even if I didn't have a lair yet, just trying desperately to focus on one color and get as many points for that. You have to make that decision about what's a good way. I've seen people win scattershot ways, just doing a bunch of treasures of different colors. So some interesting play and back and forth there. The other unique thing about this game is actually not in the gameplay, it's in the artwork. This game is gorgeous, just gorgeous. No small, light Kickstarter game has a right to have art this good. Whoever did this art, I believe his name is Jonas something or other. He does deserve praise. Jonas Ackerlands, he should have a long and profitable career, especially being used for board game and card game arts. Definitely look him up if you need artwork for your game. Really, really great. And I do believe that will be the defining factor about whether people pick this up over any other number of card games out there, light card games that are out there, because that's the bottom line, really, is that while I think this is a neat little game, this game does not revolutionize in any way enough to set it above, especially some of the new games that quite really are revolutionary coming out of Japan, like Love Letter and Lost Legacy and Patronize and so many other ones that are coming out that I haven't even had a chance to play yet. These games are sort of on the forefront of that, and I feel in a way that Dragon's Hoard is sort of, not maybe in the past, but it's sort of leaning towards the past. It has some not revolutionary, but a couple of unique things, like I said, about the changing in cards, but not enough to really put it on the forefront, I think, of people's minds. And I think what really leads me to think that way is the attack cards, because I don't know, maybe it's an unfair judgment, but I think that when I play a game now and I see the skip the player card, I don't know. I think Uno. And while I think Uno had its place, and I certainly had fun playing Uno in the past, I've sort of moved on from that. It's why I don't play normal Risk anymore, you know, because it had its place too, but it's time to move on. And I think skipping players and stealing cards from other players' hands, in this game at least, can be a severe, severe setback to people. Enough that it sort of can define the game. And I think that that kind of limits the strategy here. You know, you can't always just spam attack. That's why they have defense cards. But then again, if I'm worrying about defense, then I'm not really worrying about the strategy of building my sets. I don't know how you get around that. I think that there needed to be interaction in the game, but maybe there could have been done in a different way. I mean, you're dragons after all. I'm not even sure why you're playing knight cards on other dragons. You know, you have the battle card, but the battle card is just a defense card. So why can't I get into a furious battle with you? Like, really, like maybe something like the Star Wars Edge of the Empire card game where you're throwing down like flame cards and stuff. I don't know. But maybe that's above and beyond the pay grade of this game. For what it is, I think it's fun. I just think that you have a ton of other options. And what's really going to define whether or not you like this is the very light theme and the gorgeous artwork. So you look it up. If you have a chance to try it without buying it, that would definitely be ideal. I don't think that if and when the game hits retail, because this is just a Kickstarter copy, if and when it hits retail, I don't know how expensive it will be. I don't think it will be that expensive, so maybe you want to give it a shot. If you're into light card games, if you're into really gorgeous art, and you like the beautiful fantasy theme, it might be right up your alley. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.